All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of The Drop Set. This is Darren Starr. Thank you for joining me today on this lovely Wednesday, the first Wednesday of September 2017. It's been a wild week for a lot of people, for people recovering from Hurricane Harvey, for people bracing for Hurricane Irma. There's a lot of stuff going on. And here in East Tennessee, it felt like we were going to float away yesterday with all the rain that we had, but nonetheless, we are still here. So thanks for joining me. We've got a lot to go over today. We are live broadcasting on Facebook. Wave to everyone in Facebook land, and Instagram. Wave to everyone in Instagram land. Hello, everyone. And then this will be put up on YouTube after it's been recorded. And then the audio, of course, will be available via iTunes, Google Play, and on the website at 5starphysique.com. Whew, eventually I'm going to write that script out so I don't have to feel like I'm ad-libbing it all the time. So we've got a lot of stuff to go over. Just recapping the week that was in the world of me, which of course everyone is fascinated about, right? It's been a busy week. I've been taking on a lot of different social media endeavors this week, so I've been uploading a lot of stuff onto my YouTube channel. Basically just workout videos. Each one of them is about a minute long or so. There have been some logistical challenges with that. The first one that I uploaded was immediately flagged for copyright violation because of background music in the gym, which kind of shot down my plans pretty quickly, because what I'd been doing was, before each lift, I was talking into the camera and explaining it. And then I go to work, and then you can hear the music, and immediately, like, all the publishers have algorithms set up so that they can recognize if their music's being played on something and say, copyright violation. It's really the most annoying damn thing in the world, because, if somebody really wants to hear this song by Kanye West, are they going to pull up my lifting video where I'm actively trying to talk over it, and then it's just like this annoying noise in the background that only a computer program could really recognize as being that song? It's obnoxious. So anyway, I've been doing instead, putting those up kind of muted with a voiceover on top of it instead. So anyway, I put up probably about 15 or so of those since Sunday. My goal is to hit about 5 a day. So that's on my YouTube channel, which is... I don't know how you get to it. Obviously, I'm still learning this. It's like youtube.com/user/5starfitness, I think, something like that. If you search for my name on YouTube, you'll find it. So they're obviously wildly popular videos, as each one of them has at least like 4 or 5 views currently. So it's a work in progress, so be patient. Instagram, continuing to post stuff there. Obviously, we're live. Hey, Instagram people. Same with Facebook. Hi. I'm trying to do less cross-posting, so if you follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you won't necessarily get inundated with the same stuff on both platforms. The website has been updated quite a bit. I've put some effort into that. I'm hardly a master web designer, but I'm trying to wear many hats, so making some improvements there. Workout programs are coming soon. I know I've been saying that, but I've set myself a deadline that they've got to be up online this month, so stay tuned for that. We're going to go over poll results, but oopsie, last week I forgot to put a new poll up, and also there are some technical issues where the website redesign has killed the poll off the front page of the website. So that's on hiatus temporarily until I figure out what's going on there. We got four subjects to cover today. We're going to go over some bodybuilding myths, which is kind of a regular recurring segment. We are going to talk about, we're going to go on a little bit of a rant, just a brief one. And then the two main topics we're going to talk about cheat meals, and then we're going to talk about sustainability, not as it relates to the environment, but as it relates to bodybuilding specifically, how to stay engaged for the long haul. So let's jump right in and talk myths. So bodybuilding myths, I talk with a lot of people. They'll contact me and they'll say, I read one thing, I read this thing, and they seem to contradict one another, and I don't really know what to believe. And all I can say is, I feel you. I really do. Just because there is so much BS out there. And so what I did, because sometimes I just have a tough time getting out of my own little world and thinking about it from a fresh perspective. So I went and I just Googled bodybuilding myths. And the first thing that came up is this article from my favorite resource ever, bodybuilding.com. I have talked about this before. I appreciate bodybuilding.com for what they do in trying to turn bodybuilding into something mainstream, but some of the content that they have online is just absolute trash. And when you put up as much stuff as they do, they can't all be winners. So I found this article, and what they're doing is dispelling myths that are, in fact, not myths. So I was reading this, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? That's not a myth. That's reality. So a couple things. I mean, this is a list of like 4 or 5 things, and the first few were just stupid. So I want to talk about those. The remaining ones that they had, like number 4, they said low reps are for size and high reps are for cutting. I agree. It's a very stupid mentality. That's completely wrong. And then myth number 5, I don't know if this is a myth so much as just a habit that people fall into, which is Monday is chest day, Tuesday is leg day, Wednesday is back day. That is a horribly, horribly ineffective way to schedule a workout split. So basically, if you find yourself falling into that trap, you're doing it wrong. So we don't want to do that, because then, Monday's chest day, Tuesday's leg day. Oh man, I'm always sick or busy on Tuesdays. And then you never train legs. So that is a really, really dumb way to construct a workout split. So the first 3 myths, I will use finger quotes on that, myths. The first one says, train like a bodybuilder to become a bodybuilder. Yeah, that's pretty much what you do. What they're saying here is that, the article says the traditional 5 to 7 day splits, 5 exercises per muscle, 24 set chest routine is training suicide for the average trainee not spending a couple $1,000s a week on special vitamins. They're talking steroids, of course, which is possibly one of the dumbest sentences I've ever seen before. 24 sets on a chest routine is not going to put you into a bodybuilding grave. What it's going to do, if you do it effectively and you have your nutrition in order, is going to cause you to grow. So it reminds me of those people who say, man, you go to the gym too much. What you're doing isn't healthy. You just they have no clue at all. And the fact that the thought that you would need to spend a couple $1,000s a week on supplements, I don't know how you could spend a couple $1,000s a week. They're saying, these are designed for professional bodybuilders. I don't think a 24 set chest workout is exclusively the domain of professional bodybuilders. Let's just get realistic here. You're going to have to put in some work, and it's going to involve a lot of training. So it's going to involve a lot of rest as well, and a reasonably constructed split, a proper diet, etc. But let's be clear. If you're going to do a body part split where you train chest, legs, shoulders, whatever on different days, it's really hard to overtrain, especially if you're training 24 sets per workout, which you can easily get that done in an hour. So myth number 2 is train for the pump. Their implication there is that you don't do that because the pump is not what makes you grow. And I can half agree with that, because it is not. However, it is the indicator that you're on the right track, and that you are hitting all of the bullet points that you need in order to induce muscle growth. So that one, I won't argue with them too much, because technically they're correct. But if you're not training for a pump, what are you training for? What other indicators can you have that you're hitting things effectively? So, and then the last one that they have that I take issue with is you must train until failure. Their logic is that you don't train towards failure. And then the giveaway is the second paragraph of this article. It says, growing up as a long distance runner, stop. Anything that you say after that, I just don't care. If you grew up as a long distance runner, I don't really care what you have to say about bodybuilding and training to failure, which is not to say that, you don't know anything, but bodybuilding and failure kind of go hand in hand. And if someone's going to make the argument that they don't, I will debate that to the grave with you, and we will see who gets better results long term. So I know it's kind of a meathead approach. It's a little like, oh, he's just too hardcore. Trust me, I am not that hardcore. Now, training to failure all the time, like every set, is an impossibility. You can't do that. But you've got to pick your spots. And on an average workout, if you're doing 4 or 5 exercises for a muscle group, I'd say, the last set of 2 of those, you should absolutely train to failure. And I would say it's very likely that if you're just starting out with this and you maybe don't have years and years of experience, you might not know what training to failure really means until you kind of see it in action. So it's one of those things where, you're grunting, you're groaning, you're making ugly faces, spit's flying out of your mouth everywhere, you're cussing, somebody's yelling at you. I mean, that's typically what training to failure looks like. You can do it a little more low key than that, but that's what it feels like on the inside at the very least. So there you go. There's my myth for the week, my attempt to dispel some myths at least. So now we will make a very casual segue into a rant because I feel like I've already been ranting. This one will be relatively brief, and it's something that I don't think will require a whole lot of a terribly convincing argument in order to get people on board with. But what I want to rant about are these, what do they call them? These toning creams, shred creams, whatever stuff that you rub on you that's supposed to, get rid of fat or something like that. So think about it for a second. The traditional methods for reducing and removing body fat stores are diet and exercise. So it's hard work. So some genius had the idea of hey, we can come up with a cream that you can rub on yourself and it's going to cause a lack of water retention and it's going to look like you lost fat. And you jump on the scale the next day and it's down. Just don't jump on it 2 days later because it will be back up. It's the same thing with those just absolutely moronic It Works body wraps. And if you're an affiliate for It Works, and you're watching this right now, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. What you're selling is garbage. It is just absolute trash that people pay money for. So, it will cause localized reduction in water retention, which is very temporary. So if you want to do that because you're having a wedding or something like that and you want to fit into your dress, great. It's a good one-day solution. It is not a long-term solution. Same thing with these stupid creams. And I see people on Instagram who are oh, look at me. I'm rubbing this stuff on me because I'm all hot. And then I'm going to put the thing down in front of the camera so you can see what it is while I rub it in. And I'm like, ugh. I just can't. I can't. It's like people who will intentionally photobomb their workout by putting, the container of their pre-workout in focus on the camera or something like that. It's like, I understand being an affiliate for a supplement company, but I mean, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I will not be that guy. So, comment, It Works. Shut up. Sorry. That was from Instagram. You're in trouble. Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to rant about was cleanses. So I'm not a fan of cleanses. My background is, before I got into bodybuilding and training was science-based. It was engineering. So I tend to think of things from that perspective first. So whenever somebody talks about a cleanse, my first question is, what are you trying to cleanse yourself of? And then invariably, the one word that comes about is toxins. Okay, can you define what a toxin is, please? Can you say specifically what toxins you are trying to get rid of? And then people will talk about things like antioxidants, etc., and all this stuff is well and good, but a cleanse doesn't do anything. There are exceptions to this, like a candida cleanse, for example, is something that is a very involved protocol. It takes a long time. I think, if I remember correctly, it's about a month-long thing if you want to really do it correctly. It's designed to shift the balance of bacteria in your gut. So that's something that makes a little bit of sense, but like juice cleanses, things like that, they're intended to promote water loss. And as such, then you see a drop in the scale. You're like, oh my God, it's awesome. This cleanse is great. And then within a few days, it comes back. So basically, if you're thinking of doing a cleanse, a few things to consider. Don't, and actually that's it. So there you go. All right, I'm done ranting. So now we move into a slightly more positive space here. Where are all my Facebook people? Where are you? Come on, guys. Come on. Instagram. I got some people over there. Hey. I like how Instagram tells me who's joined, but it doesn't tell me who's left. So there have been a ton of people that have joined, but only a handful watching right now. So come on back, y'all. Okay, so the main two topics that I wanted to cover for today, the first one is cheat meals. Something, hold on, I might shed a tear here. It's very near and dear to my heart. damn it, I love me some cheat meals. I can tell you that right now. I mean, you can see I've got a definite emotional attachment to this subject. So I love food. I really do. I'm not going to lie. And so I think most people can relate to this. When you start cutting, the one thing that you expect is like, oh, I'm not going to get that cheat meal, or I have to start cherishing my cheat meals because I'm not going to have 4 a week anymore, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, that's fair. The first thing to talk about when it comes to cheat meals is, are they necessary? And the answer is no, they are not. A cheat meal is never, ever, under any circumstances, necessary. Now that may change depending on one's willpower. Like, I think we all can reach our breaking point, and just getting a little something can make a world of difference. So at that point, it may feel like it's required, but if you just toughen up and suck it up a little bit, you'll be fine. From a physiological perspective, a cheat meal is never required. Now, one thing that can be required based on circumstances, etc., especially during competition prep where we're moving, we're kind of racing against time, so to speak, so we have to be as efficient as possible, is a caloric influx that's kind of, centered around a set time period, or maybe it's for the better part of a day, something like that. So that I would call, we could do that as a cheat meal where you're bringing in a whole bunch of calories all at once, or it could be a more strategic refeed where for the day we're taking in a higher influx of carbs and or fats, or a combination of the two. So some kind of a caloric influx can very frequently be necessary, or at least really, really, really helpful to speed things up. The reason behind that is one of the things that happens as you run a caloric deficit for a long period of time is you get cranky, you get hard to be around. Oh wait, no, that's not what we were covering here. What happens under the hood, inside you, is hormonally speaking, things start to take a hit. And the one thing that we're really concerned about is the hormone leptin, which is the master regulator of your metabolism. So as your leptin levels drop, your metabolic functioning is going to drop as well. And your metabolic functioning determines the rate at which you can burn calories. So if that drops, that sucks. We don't want that. And so in order to spike the leptin back up, we have to convince the body that it's no longer in a caloric deficit. And so a cheat meal or a scheduled day-long refeed can go miles towards helping that happen. So I always think of something like that, either a refeed or a cheat meal, as being a stop at a gas station, basically. You can say, I'm going to drive from LA to New York, and I'm not going to stop and get gas. I'm going to diet for 24 weeks. I'm never going to take a refeed or a cheat meal. You're going to get just about as far. You're going to get halfway through Arizona, and you're going to run out of gas. You're going to be stuck in the desert. Or, with a diet, you'll get, maybe 8, 10, 12 weeks in, and then everything just takes a shit. You start feeling lousy, you just can't get it done, you're miserable, and you're starting to think why in the hell am I doing this? And sometimes you'll remember why you did it, and other times you won't, and you'll just quit. So oftentimes stopping to refuel can be just what it takes to help, keep your car on the road a little bit longer. So as a coach, one of the things that I'm looking for when determining if something like this is necessary is, is it physiologically necessary? And then is it mentally necessary? And I know, if anybody's listening out there, I know, because I'm always asking these questions, I'm kind of beating around the bush a little bit, because I don't just want to ask somebody, hey, you want a cheat meal this week? Because I know what that answer is. So I'm kind of trying to interpret the signs, the metabolic signs, talking about, how effective do your workouts feel? How intense is your cardio? How are you sleeping? Are you energetic throughout the day? Things like that. And between all of that stuff and then looking at some numbers and those kind of things, I can make a determination as to whether something's necessary, if it looks like it's going to be necessary relatively soon. So for all you out there that have worked with me or are working with me now, and you're taking notes okay, so this is what I have to say in order to get a cheat meal. Okay, taking notes. I can see through that. So just so you know, I've been doing this long enough. I know how to read between the lines. So several purposes, we want to keep the leptin levels up for sure. We also, that goes along with metabolic functioning. Cravings are a big thing too. And cravings are something that can really be just an issue of mind over matter. But sometimes they can absolutely feel like very real physical things at the same time. And when we get to that stage, I find it's often helpful to feed them either directly or indirectly. Like if you're thinking like I would actually kill somebody and go to jail for a Pop-Tart right now. First of all, raise your hand if you've been there. I have 2 hands up presently. Maybe that's not what we need, but maybe just some kind of carb is going to do the trick. And maybe if we just have an influx of cleaner carbs, it might be more productive. Or maybe we just eat the damn Pop-Tart and move on with it. So we've got to really think about what's necessary, though, because it's like a rubber band that starts to dry out. Boy, I'm really on the ball with my metaphors today. So, man, I should write a few blog posts after this because I feel like I'm on fire here. So contest prep is like a rubber band that dries out. You know, you can get a lot of malleability and a lot of work and flexibility out of it early on, and then as it dries out, it becomes easier and easier and easier to break. And what we want to do as we go through our prep, or as we go through just our diet for transformation purposes or anything like that, is to stretch that rubber band as much as we can without having too many of those cracks appear. And make sure it doesn't break, basically. So, how to do it right. So if we're talking about a cheat meal, so we've determined, okay, it's necessary. Let's do it. Let's get it in, whether it's to satisfy cravings, whether it's because, you're telling me that you will hunt me down and murder my family if I don't let you eat ice cream this week or something like that. I'm like, all right, you know what? I can be reasoned with. You're basically holding me hostage for food. I'll take it. That's fine, whatever. How do we do it correctly, and how can we mess it up? So what I will tell people, and this is going to vary depending on what your meal plan looks like. So the typical strategies that I employ, if somebody has a written out meal plan, so set like meal 1 is this, meal 2 is this, meal 3 is this, etc. I like to work it post-workout, or at least a little bit after working out. Like if you work out in the mornings, okay, great. If you can squeeze it in for lunch or an early dinner, that's fine. It doesn't have to be immediately post-workout. Basically what you're going to do is take one meal out of your plan, throw it away, and plug this in instead. And I will typically provide for people caloric guidelines to shoot for. And sometimes your caloric guideline is, I don't care. Just get it in. Look at how many calories you get in a normal meal, and you want to go at least 3 or 4 times that, because the idea is we want a caloric surplus during that time slot. I guess the other thing to consider is if you have a macronutrient-based diet where you're given targets like protein, carbs, fats to hit for the day. The question is, okay, well, how do I work a cheat meal in there? And just over time, through trial and error, I've figured out a formula that works fairly well. Again, I'm supplying something of a caloric target there, and usually it's like, okay, just making up some numbers here. Let's make it 700 to 1,000 calories, something like that. Don't care what the composition is so much. Like if you want to eat, 850 calories of gummy bears, go for it. I mean, I think that's a waste of a cheat meal personally, but that's just preference. But what we'll typically do for macros is say your targets now are 80% of what they usually are. So, and usually when we're talking about a cheat meal like this, it's when we're on a deficit already. So the numbers are not huge. The protein, carbs, and fat targets are not terribly high. So we take 80% of that. So they're still there. We're still getting in quality protein for the day. We're still getting in some percentage of our carbs and fats for the day. And then we're going to throw the cheat meal on there in whatever caloric range. I forgot what I've already said. 80% proteins, carbs, and fats. We're going to throw the cheat meal on there untracked. So when you're reporting macros to me, if you're one of my clients, what I'd expect to see for that day is the macros that you hit being very close to 80% of the targets, and then parenthetically after that, cheat meal consisted of blah, 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 basically just because I'm always looking for ideas on what my next cheat meal should be. So whenever one of my clients has a cheat meal, I'm always like, tell me about it. Give me pictures. Give me all the dirty details. I want to know. Where did you go? What did you have? Just because I don't know, I may have an eating disorder. That's entirely possible. So how to do it right is to stick within the caloric guidelines. Try to time it. I typically tell people to avoid having a cheat meal or a refeed on an off day, or especially if it's later in the day, if it's a cheat meal and not a refeed, but it's one eating event basically, and it's later in the day. Make sure you can lift the next day, just because you're going to have that caloric surplus in you, especially if you're, towards the end of your prep, you're nice and lean, which, if you can get cheat meals towards the end of your prep, kudos to you, because it means you've been doing things right. but you're nice and lean. I mean, the pump and the detail that you're going to get, the hardness, the vascularity that you're going to see in your next workout is going to be unlike anything you've seen before. So I always want people to take advantage of that, have a quality workout, because when you see that stuff, it makes you push harder. So that's one of the very real benefits we can get from a cheat meal as well, is just, a bump in motivation, just being able to see what it does to you and how your body responds to the influx of carbs, sodium, saturated fats, all that bad stuff that we think about. Your body loves that stuff when it's depleted. So it will always give you a good response there. How to mess up a cheat meal. There's only a couple ways to do it. If you're working with me and I provide you a caloric range for the cheat meal and you don't hit that, you have failed. And I get a lot of people who, through guilt or not wanting to mess up their diet or anything like that, I'll say, from the previous example, 700 to 1,000 calories, something like that. Just estimate it. If you're going to go someplace, you can check out their menu online, see if they have caloric estimates there, or you can just, go on MyFitnessPal and look up what an approximation for something similar might be. As long as we can get in the right ballpark, that's all I care about. If you go under that, you have basically, kneecapped the entire purpose of the cheat meal, which is to get a caloric surplus. So if you take out your 300 calorie meal and plug in a 500 calorie meal instead, that's not accomplishing what we want to do. So you can absolutely mess it up by undershooting the target, or if you go way over. And certainly the biggest way that you can mess up your cheat meal is if you eat to the point where you are sick to your stomach and you hate yourself. Basically, because it is mentally not healthy. And that is how bodybuilders legitimately develop eating disorders. I know I joked about it a moment ago, but it's a very serious topic. So I'm always cognizant of that. So I always tell people, go in with a plan and stick to your plan. So make sure your plan makes sense and is reasonable. If your plan is, I'm going to go and have 3 burgers and 2 desserts and, a post-dessert after that too, I would say you have a bad plan. Let's come up with something different. But if you say, I'm going to go in and have a burger and fries, hey, great. That's cool. Stick with that. If you go in and have that burger and fries, and then afterwards you're like, oh, that looks good, oh, that looks good, you're off plan at that point. So the great thing about a cheat meal is you get a chance to basically design your own plan, such as it is, but you do have to stick to it. So try not to improvise, wing it, exercise a little bit of self-control, but for the love of God, enjoy it, because that's what it's there for. So cheat meals 101, there you go. That being said, I think I want to have one tonight. Just kidding. If you saw my Instagram post yesterday, I went to Five Guys. I had a post-workout cheat meal for lunch yesterday. So trying to keep things relatively tight today. Tomorrow might be another story. Who knows? I am in the off season after all. Improvement season, as we call it, because there is no off season because we're always on. So speaking of always on, that is a great segue into the second topic of the day, which is sustainability. And as I mentioned at the onset, sustainability is about, as it relates to bodybuilding, I know it's a buzzword when it comes to the environment as well, but we're going to talk about sustainability in bodybuilding simply because bodybuilding is, as I wrote in my outline here, it's all about the long game. So it is, to use a cliche, a marathon, not a sprint. So sustainability means, okay, I have this plan set up, and the basic plan, if we look at bodybuilding in general, your basic plan is you're going to eat specific stuff or specific amounts of stuff, and that may change over time, and you're going to go lift heavy things and put them down, and you're going to do some cardio. If we zoom out to the 30,000 foot view, that's what your plan looks like. So sustainability is all about how can we keep those elements in place for years? Because years is how long it takes to really make things happen. You can get great results in 4 months, 6 months, 1 year, but bodybuilding is a cumulative sport. I always hesitate to use the word sport when it comes to bodybuilding, but nonetheless, we'll call it that. We'll just roll with it. So it is cumulative, and so I've been doing this for 20 years. Am I where I want to be? No. I mean, I have more ambitious goals, so I continue, every day, every week, every month, every year to try and work a little bit harder than the previous one of those. So today's workout, trying to make it just a little, 0.5% more intense than it was yesterday. Trying to execute everything this week a little bit better than I did last week. Trying to make this month a little bit more productive than the previous month, and looking big picture, trying to get more out of my potential this year than I did the previous year, which is not to undersell my efforts in those previous days, weeks, months, or years, but just that I can always try to improve. There's no cap on how hard you can work, how precise you can be. Well, there is a cap on how precise you can be, 100%. So you can't give 110%. But there's no cap on how hard you can work, how aggressively you can attack something. You can always hit that cardio a little bit harder. You can always do a little bit more research. You can always learn a little bit more about how to approach a workout, how to approach a specific exercise, how to get more out of that. So those are all things to consider. So it's about the long game. So what kind of things are we thinking about when we think about the years that you might spend bodybuilding, and how to keep things on track throughout those years? So the first thing that comes to mind is injury prevention. Nothing is going to slow you down and hinder your progress and damage your overall potential for results quite like either having a nagging injury that just never really goes away, or having a more serious acute injury that causes you to lose several weeks or months. So, you sprain something, whatever, you sprain an ankle, you've got to skip legs for 2 weeks because it's a really bad sprain. Again, zoom out, 30,000 foot view. Over the grand scheme of things, missing out on leg workouts for 2 weeks is not going to kill you. 5 years, you look at 5 years, missing 2 weeks, 2 or 3 leg sessions, it's not going to kill you. What is more of a concern are, more serious acute injuries. And, in bodybuilding, typically, if there's something like that, you're doing something really wrong. You think about, torn pecs, torn hammies, things like that, torn biceps. Those are the most common things that you hear about. Tears, especially if it's a full tear, you're going to have some problems. It's going to slow you down a lot. So what I recommend for injury prevention is, learn as much as you can about how to correctly do stuff. And I don't care how much experience you have lifting, training, teaching other people, anything like that. No matter how much experience you have, you can always learn more, not just about how to do an exercise more effectively, but how to do it in a more safe and productive way as well. So, injury prevention is key. Avoiding the acute injuries, knock on wood. I've never had a serious injury like that. Never broken a bone, never pulled anything. I think we've all had those little lower back tweaks where you're kind of walking around funny. Maybe you miss a few days and, it takes about a week to sort itself out. But not a huge thing. Just think about, what did I do that caused that? And sometimes the answer is just a really embarrassing, I slept on it wrong, So you've got to make up a better story than that for sure. But the thing that can be equally damaging is when you have those nagging injuries that just don't go away. And my shoulder is doing this, so every time I train shoulders, when I do, any of these, 40% of all available shoulder exercises, I feel it there. Okay, as soon as you recognize that, get it checked out. Because most of that stuff, I say most, not all, most is fixable. And whenever we have a physical issue like that, I always tell people, forget the doctor, forget the chiropractor, what you need is a physical therapist. Because the doctor is going to be like, I don't know, you should probably just stop lifting. I mean, that's what all doctors say, unless they are lifters themselves. I am skewed against against physicians, maybe unfairly, but nonetheless, I am. A chiropractor will adjust you, and it will feel better, but it's not fixing anything. It will come back. A physical therapist will give you homework, and it will be stuff that you have to do, but a good physical therapist will be able to identify the problem and give you a protocol to fix it and improve it. And then it's on you to actually go through that protocol. And if you're serious about bodybuilding and your long-term sustainability, you damn well better stick with that protocol and do what they tell you to do. That's your homework. It's going to make things better. So, injury prevention is key, not just for avoiding the big things, but taking care of the little nagging things that are bothering you. So shoulders, knees, and lower back, shin splints, all those things are things that typically with some professional help, can be addressed and taken care of. So another concern, something to think about when it comes to sustainability, is diet sustainability. And this kind of dovetails in with another thing, which is family-related stress. So stop if you've heard me before. You're on a diet, you're going really well, and you get some comment from somebody close to you that says, why do you have to carry around that chicken and that Tupperware all the damn time? Why can't you eat like a normal person? So this is the conversation of sustainability when it comes to the diet, is knowing when there are times to do that and when there are times to just kind of be normal and live. So we'll talk about things to do in order to improve that. But the sustainability of your diet also means you can't run at a caloric deficit for a year. You know, you've got to give yourself a break. You've got to give your metabolism a little bit of a break, so that it's not just feeling like, I mean, eventually it's going to feel like you're just swimming upstream, and you're going to be working really hard on all facets, and I don't want to say getting nowhere, but going where you're going very slow. So that's another thing to consider. Also, another factor to consider is getting into a rut with your training. So variety helps tremendously, but you can't be ADD when it comes to your training. Like if you go in and every day is different, as mine is right now, confession, and I have only myself to blame for that. So my training is different just because I'm trying to record as much stuff as I possibly can, so I'm doing different exercises every day. So I did arms today. I'll go back in for arms several days from now and do a completely separate set of exercises just because I need to record more stuff. So I have a legitimate purpose for that, but confession, I'm not following my own advice here for the time being. But having a workout split that is varied but also structured, so it kind of keeps you on a path for progression, but it changes regularly but not every week, is key as well. So that keeps you more mentally engaged. It keeps your body, I don't want to say guessing because your muscles don't know what's happening to them anyway, but it keeps your brain a little bit more engaged and detaches your brain from expectations, which is really helpful as far as, you know, continuing to hit things with a variety of variables. So how can we improve these things? So when it comes to injury prevention, the thing that I always tell people is the first thing you need to learn how to do is work out smarter. And then once we've got that, then we're going to work out harder. But smarter first, which means learning as much as you possibly can. So how to perform something correctly, how to perform it more effectively, how to perform it with greater intensity. And then once you work on that last point there, the greater intensity, that's where the working harder comes from. So greater intensity does not necessarily always mean lifting more weight. One thing that I will tell people is that there are a variety of variables that you can adjust in your training to make things more intense. And you should probably consider all of those before trying to increase weight in a significant way. So these would be things like overall volume, rep ranges, range of motion, making sure that it's full, making sure that you're feeling it, making sure that you can actually make a mind-muscle connection with the target muscle that's working, slowing things down a little bit, focusing on the isometric phase, a quality negative, etc. All of those things are kind of like the prerequisite to have in place before you start bumping weights up. So we want to make sure that we have a handle on all that stuff first. When it comes to diet sustainability, I feel like a broken record because I probably say this a dozen times talking with clients every day. Flexible dieting. I know it's not the holy grail that everyone makes it out to be. It's not like super life-changing for everybody, but for a lot of people, it absolutely is. So I've got a couple people I'm working with right now that I've kind of pushed in that direction, just because the feedback that I get from them, like, I need more variability in my diet. And I know what they mean. They don't mean, hey, can I have rice instead of sweet potatoes? They mean like, hey, can I have this random carb that I found in the store? And the answer is yes, but you need to learn how to account for that. So it is something that opens up a huge array of possibilities. Less so when you're cutting, just because when you're at a deficit, your carbs and your fats are probably going to be a little bit lower. And that means that, you've got this small little bucket that you have to fill, and there's only so many ways you can fill it without spilling over on one of the other macros. So it's not like, I'm flexible dieting, now I can have Oreos for my carbs. No, because those have fat too. So your fat number's too low to really let you get away with too much of that. So But learning how to do flexible dieting, learning how to track your macros, learning how to go out to eat with your family and still stay relatively within the confines of your plan, of your macro structure, huge. Absolutely huge. It's a game changer. You do that, and as long as you perform your due diligence and you learn how to really grill the people who work at the restaurant when you're placing your order, like, how is this prepared? Is this, can I get this on the side, et cetera, and get it all set up. And you can absolutely, you're going to be a little high maintenance, but even if you're in prep and you're several weeks out, if you do that and you're really careful with it and you're good at eyeballing portion sizes, or God forbid, if you want to be one of those people that takes a food scale with you to a restaurant, please don't do that. But if you want to be that person, great. I mean, you can make that work. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. You just have to know what you're putting in your body. You have to know how this was prepared, how that was prepared, what the components of this are, etc., and then log it. The other thing that you could do, and this works better when you're thinking about the off season specifically, is intuitive eating. So you need to, and that's basically like, I'm not following a plan, I'm not logging, but I know I'm going to eat this many meals per day. They're going to look about like this. I'm going to have, this portion of carbs. I'm going to have, some protein in here. I'm going to bring in fats at these meals. That works for a lot of people. So it's just following a very loose plan. The thing with that is you need to monitor some of your measurables closely, like scale weight, a couple of caliper pinches, some test clothes, like a tight pair of jeans. Make sure that you stay in a comfortable range on all of those. And then you can get away with a much more relaxed off season. Also important is to phase your dieting. I kind of alluded to this previously. You don't want to be cutting at a caloric deficit for a year. It's just not productive. So you need to phase things. One of the things that I do is I work with people and I try to plan that stuff out well in advance. So we know what our target is, if it's a show, if it's a photo shoot, if it's just, I want to be, in this kind of shape on my birthday or whatever. Great. All right. We can work towards that. Now let's think about how best to use the time from now until then, how we can phase that so we're not just constantly cutting. If it's like a year and a half or something like that, you can't be at a caloric deficit and have it be productive for that entire time. So you've got to phase it and then time those phases intelligently. So, if okay, well, I'm getting married here, but my goal is 4 months later. Okay, so trying to be at a hardcore caloric deficit when you're about to get married, it might not be the best idea. You can do it, but you're going to be doing a lot of other stuff. You're going to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off and trying to sustain a caloric deficit and a very precise diet through that. Big time degree of difficulty, and nobody awards bonus points in this for degree of difficulty. So think about the obstacles that you have in place, vacations, events, things like that, and try to time your phases around those. And the other thing, and this is something that, I'll be providing soon, so a little plug here, have somebody else write your workouts for you. When you write your own workouts, most of us naturally will gravitate towards things that we enjoy doing, things that we're good at, things that we're strong with, and when you're trying to improve, you need to focus on exactly the opposite. Stuff that maybe you don't necessarily like because you're not particularly good at it. You're not particularly strong with that. And if you have somebody that writes your workouts for you, if they can see you and kind of assess visually, like, okay, where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses, and then decide this is what we're going to work on. We're going to have a training split where we hit this multiple times per week. Your arms are fine. We're actually not going to train arms right now. And you're like, wait, why not? What the hell? But that's how to really progress and how to keep yourself from getting into a training rut, is just turn the reins over to somebody else and let them manage the workouts for you. So, all right, so that's sustainability in a nutshell, because bodybuilding is a long-term thing. So you really need to, you've got to set yourself up for success over the course of years. A lot of us get caught up on what the next 12 or 16 weeks is going to look like, but I think that short-sightedness does nobody any good. So what we want to do instead is focus on, what do my next 3, 4, 5, 10 years look like? What are my goals over that period of time? And then plan accordingly. So, all right. So that's it. we covered a lot of ground this week. Thanks for sticking around, everybody who did. I appreciate it. So as I mentioned, this will be available to watch on Facebook. It will be posted after this. It will be up on my Instagram story for the next 24 hours, 12 hours, however long those things last. It will be going up on YouTube as well, the video for this, and then the audio will be on iTunes, Google Play, on the website as well, 5starphysique.com. So for everybody there on thumbs up to you too, Cassandra, thank you. For everybody on Instagram, follow me at 5starfit. Everybody on Facebook, facebook.com/5starphysique, 5starphysique.com, blah, 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 blah. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. I appreciate it. Everybody have a great week, and I'll chat with you again next week. Stop recording. Bye, Facebook. Thanks.